Okay, so what we're going to do now, since I don't have the focus to push more, okay? I want to show you a couple of things of how you can try different techniques in trail braking. The braking reference point should not change, should always be the same. Now, what I'm going to show you is, once you have started braking at the reference point, here, this is where you can see you brake normally, you turn into the turn, and you have some understeer, for example. Try and experiment with the brake pedal. So the moment that you feel the understeer and you're going like this, okay, instead of turning more and braking more, which is something that pretty much everybody does initially, turn less or keep the steering wheel, input limited and release the brakes. So let me show you down at the Rivazza what we're going to do. We're going to brake right at the reference point. Like this, brake, 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 full braking. You see, car didn't really, and I'm too slow, you see. So I kept on the brakes, turning the steering wheel, lost my apex, and I was too slow. Let me show you this in the replay. HUD here. I want you to check what I'm doing with the steering wheel and with the brake here. So as you can see, I'm starting braking at my reference point, hard on the brakes, okay, very hard on the brakes, full 100% braking still while I'm turning in. So I'm braking 100% while I'm turning in, okay? And yes, the ABS will save me a little bit and the car will start turning in, but you can see that no matter how much steering input I give and how much I keep on braking, okay, I'm not exactly arriving at the apex. Look at this. I'm not exactly at the apex. Yes, I'm going to touch the curb, but I'm not at the apex. I'm not inside the curb. And I gave tons of braking. I gave tons of steering wheel, and up 84 kilometers per hour, right? Now, let's go back to one of the many laps here. I don't know, this one maybe. So, braking again at my reference point, as usual. Let's go down. So, 100% braking, as long as I'm in a straight line. Okay. Braking, braking, braking. Now, you will see that I'm turning in. So, steering wheel turns in. Braking is, I don't know if you can see it, braking is already less than 100%. So, the moment I turn in, I have to modulate my braking. This is something that you really have to try. Now, some of you people are saying, well, I have G29s, whatever, they are not as sensible, or my pedals are not so good anymore, so I have issues of modulating. Try to do something, but for sure do not stay 100% on the braking. So let's go really slow now. Look at this. As I am keep turning, and you can see how little steering input I'm giving. Much less than before. Before I was like this. Now I am like, I don't know, what is that? Not even 30 degrees, 20 degrees. And the braking force at the pedal, you can see it here, is less than half already. You see? And I'm still away from the apex. Let's keep on going. Just a little bit of braking, extra. And then here, I'm releasing the brakes completely. And I'm giving the last, extra turning, right, to put the car inside and keep it there, okay, because otherwise, obviously, I'm having way too much speed right now. But I try to not overdo it. So look at this. Some extra over the curb. That's all I need. And then release the steering wheel again. And you can see that I was at 95 kilometers, from almost 10 kilometers more on the apex, right? And I was still able to catch the apex much better. You can see that even on the next turn. And that was not a very good turn, by the way. But even like that, I was faster. And here you can see braking again, 100%, releasing the brakes at turning. You see, this time I'm just touching the brakes and I managed to rotate the car, because all you need is just rotate the car. If you touch the brakes, you rotate the car. If you're heavy on the brakes, lots of weight at the front, lots of braking, lots of slippage, the front tires cannot do both things. They cannot brake and decelerate the car and turn. And so you start to having understeer. Little bit of load and less need for the front tires to decelerate means more lateral grip, so the car will rotate. So try those things. Try them in every single turn, okay? The number one thing that you have to do, always brake at the correct reference point, okay? And while you are braking at the correct reference point, while you will be trying, you will arrive at a situation where at some point it will click on you and you will understand that, wait a minute, I started braking at my reference point, I entered the turn even faster because I released the brakes, and the car turned so much that actually I went to the inside of the turn, or I didn't even make it to the outside of the turn at the exit. It was so much more lateral grip that the car didn't slide away, it just remained at the internal part of the turn. If that happens to you, that means that at the next lap, you should do the same thing, but start braking 2 meters later. This is how aliens manage to brake so late and yet manage to do the turn, while, for example, if you have problems, you brake even earlier, but you still cannot make the turn. The tires cannot do two things together. They cannot slow down the car and ask for lateral grip. They cannot do it together. So you have to give up one thing to get the other thing, right? So if you need to turn into the turn, you have to release the brakes. Otherwise, you won't have lateral grip. So again, brake at the reference point, turn in, release the brakes completely. If you see that you have tons of lateral grip and you can make easily the turn, next time brake 1-2 meters later and do the same. This is how you gain speed. That's where the speed is gained under braking. Okay, that's the whole thing about trail braking. Now, obviously, if your pedals are not as sensible, at some point you just have to release the brakes and go coasting into the turn. If your brake pedals are sensible enough, then just touch the brakes and rotate the car with 2, 5, 10% of braking force. Not much more than that. So this is about trail braking, but it is something that you need to try. If every time you just make the braking later and later, it doesn't work like that. You need to first try the technique and see that, oh my God, I have lateral grip now if I release the brakes, and then on the next lap, brake later. Don't try to brake later and do the technique together. Keep braking at your usual reference point and use the technique to see where do you stand inside the turn. If your car, after you have released your brakes, rotates way too much and you spin, that's also an indication that you have so much lateral grip and you are asking all that lateral grip and the car can give it to you. And before that you weren't spinning just because you were using too much braking and the car was understeering straight out of the turn. So if you gain that, this is an indication that you can go back with your setup and make a more neutral setup, but release the brakes and have even more lateral grip than before.